Our first speaker is going to be Quiondriya G, and she is an instructional designer and curriculum specialist at Purdue University. In this session, she's going to talk about how AI can support instructor onboarding in more structured and meaningful ways. You will hear about a framework that uses simulation, feedback, and data to build confidence and consistency in teaching. As you listen, think about how this could translate to your own institution or team. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Kenna. Good morning, everybody. I see the chat kind of going. Good morning. I'm really happy to be here. She gave an awesome introduction, a lot of the things that I was going to say. But once again, my name is Quiondriya. I go by Quincy, which is totally fine. And today I'll be talking about a framework we use here at Purdue to both train and evaluate our GTA that is AI enhanced. It integrates simulated student personas, which I'll touch on later. We had a competency-based workshop, and then we have a weighted evaluation system to have somewhat of a measurable instructional growth for our student teachers here at Purdue. So the creation of this system were due to 3 structural challenges that were happening that led to the creation of my position. We scaled so much where we went from having less than 10 GTAs across the entire department. And of course, with the big tech boom, now I train and manage over 260 GTAs. But the first challenge was that there's no role taxonomy. So the GTAs were assigned fully ad hoc or based on need, and that just kept growing and growing. It was at the discretion of individual faculty members. So there were no documented roles, there were no shared expectations amongst those GTAs, and it was pretty much no consistent standards across the courses for how they should be trained and how they should be evaluated. So the second was there is no instructor level evaluation. So of course, like any other university or institution, the GTAs are evaluated mid-semester, but that's just by the course. And then of course, at the end of the year, we ask faculty to evaluate those student instructors, but it only captured a small subset of GTAs. So if you're a faculty member that has 5 that you work with closely, it might not be much of a challenge for you. But if you are in the really, really large entry-level courses with 50 GTAs, it's really hard for you to evaluate each and every one of them fairly. And the third challenge was there were no shared look-fors, if you will. So the evaluation relied heavily on faculty impression. There was no agreed upon framework for what that effective performance looked like across the different roles that the GTAs even had. So that led to what we built. So instead of the ad hoc role assignment by faculty, we have a formal role taxonomy where we pretty much assessed all of the courses that we offer here at Purdue and what the types of student instructors consisted of. We landed on about 4 categories or so. For the course level evaluations only, we do have now multiple checkpoints without the semester, from not only the head TAs, the faculty, and even a little bit of student sentiment, because after all, students are the reason why we're here at all. We do now evaluate across 5 more defined dimensions, and it's weighted by what that instructor does specifically within their course. And that will make more sense later. And all of the GTAs are evaluated now, not just a small subset of them. So if faculty just so happen to manage a large section of GTAs and they just cannot evaluate everyone, we make sure that everyone is covered. And we also build a Power BI dashboard that is very valuable for both our leadership, our instructors, and our instructional support team to see who needs support where. So this is the fun part and why we are here at AI in Action. So AI, it was critical that we had AI as just an input and an automation aspect and not what was actually evaluating and training our instructors, because that takes away from our expertise, right? So basically, we have this tool, which I'll share in a second, a walkthrough, a demonstration where we have AI input where they are being trained by different student interactions, what they might come in contact with during their time as a GTA. And then with that data, and in addition to AI helping us with automation, we tiered an evaluation system that's based on the role or the work that they do as a TA. It removed a lot of evaluation bias and made it specifically related to their performance. And then the output was the coordinator, the dashboard that I built that helps inform who needs coaching, who needs instructional support, who needs help with time management. Because after all, they are PhD. Most of our GTA are PhD students as well. So we want them to excel not only in their work as an instructor, but also as a student. As someone who came from K-12, they are a student first, and so that is just as valuable. So what I would like to do now is show you guys the actual tool, and I will drop this link in the chat if you guys would like to play around with it. But basically, it was called Glow, Graduate Learning something, I can't remember, orientation workshop. So basically, with Glow, we work with instructional specialists and even some of our PhD students who wanted to be advocates for how they were trained and evaluated. And we put them in controlled scenarios of just general practice of what they might come into on a day-to-day. Aggressive students, towards those really challenging times of the year. Students who might be a little bit confused about a topic. You have the happy student that is one that everyone wants. And then what we found was the most challenging was passive students who they might not necessarily know what they need help with, but they know that they need help. So for the sake of this, and I'll walk through it quickly, I'll just go to general. Basically, we worked with the faculty and the instructional support team to pull actual course content material. We increased the intensity, if you will, the time frame of the year, the location on campus, because all of those parameters play a critical role in the interaction you will have with students. And we basically set them in a controlled environment for them to practice their communication with the students. So it gives you a prompt of how you might respond. It might show you the homework that you should be covering in that. And then it prompts you to go through and just answer their questions like you would do any large language model or AI tool. And so I'm just going to type blah, blah, blah for the sake of this chat. I can't help you, which we hope that doesn't ever happen. Sorry, gotta go. And then basically you will end. Once they ended that session, we did have certain parameters in place. They had to meet certain score thresholds to be able to satisfy the training. What then occurred is they would get evaluated via a rubric. And I know some of you may be thinking, how does the rubric not cause bias in evaluating them? But the rubric was human authored and it fed directly into the AI model, because we thought that it was valuable to evaluate them fairly, of course. So it was written by an instructional design specialist here on our team to assess them fairly without bias across 5 domains. So adaptability, conceptual understanding, time management, so how quickly and promptly they responded, how useful they were, the professional communication, and then the student-driven learning, because we try to instill in them to not just give away the answers, which might be the easy temptation, to actually prompt the students' thinking. And so it gives them a grade against all of those, and then it gives you a summary and what you can do to improve as you encounter more students in the future. So getting out of that, how that feeds into what we trained. And this slide just goes over what I just said, essentially. The analytics that we collected, we have them do it a certain amount of times, reach a certain amount of scores, and then it fed directly into our evaluation framework, which I will go over next. So basically, the AI tool that we use and the data that we collected, in addition to surveying students throughout the semester on how useful their interactions are with the instructor, we have checkpoints with their head TA, which kind of serves as like their supervisor, if you will, that kind of oversees the whole workflow. And then we have what role they play in that course. Do they grade? Do they just develop materials? Are they in front of students or are they lecture based? And then that ties into what score is being generated on how they're evaluated. So we use something that you may or may not be familiar with. I know when I was in K-12, we used it a lot. Education wasn't as, or the tools weren't as refined when I was a teacher. So we used Power BI, which is a Microsoft tool. And it's basically a tool where all the data that you collect can be automated and synthesized to generate a report to make it more meaningful, to make sense with teachers, because as teachers, we collect so much data and there usually isn't a lot of guidance of what to do with it next. And so essentially, this is the schema, the Power BI semantic model, if you will. So again, this is a Microsoft tool. It's here, looks like this. This is all of the data that we collect. Normally, and then you create these different measures for what you want the data to mean in the report. So we tied it into what role they play. And then we worked as an instructional and leadership team to work on the percentages of what should weigh what. And then there was a map aspect where we did not penalize GTAs who fell in one category, but they had more data here as opposed to here. So it was a lot of math tied into it. And then the end result was us having a meaningful dashboard to track who needs support and who doesn't. I can't show you the real dashboard on Power BI because of obviously student privacy, but I can show you a mock-up of that via this slide deck. Before I do that, I'll just go over those different schemas and how we personalized, that approach. So if they were an instructional GTA, most of them are, but not all of them. We really focus heavily on pedagogy and student sentiment because they are in front of students. So we expect them to know what they're talking about if they're in front of students. Time management plays a huge role, but typically, if they are heavy on the lecture side, you typically have other GTAs or other individuals focusing on the grading. And then compliance, of course, was the training that we do, making sure that you meet all of your competencies as an instructor. With grading and digital support, you may want to be a little bit more efficient with your time management and your compliance, and maybe less pedagogy matters when you're grading, right? But usually the rubric is already predefined and you are just grading. So time management is the most important. And then we also have dev or technical instructors that strictly just work on the technology. So of course, how they are evaluated would be different than someone that's in front of students directly. So we made sure that first they are clearly defined on what they are doing. They typically should get that structure at the beginning of the semester. You should know what you're doing as an instructor before the semester starts. At least I hope so. And the output of that is, this looks really similar to Power BI. Again, I can't show you the real thing, but this is similar. So basically, when you log into the report, it will show you over the course of all the TAs that you manage, who's on track, who's kind of developing, maybe they need some coaching and intervention, and who is at risk. Maybe they are super behind on grading, they're often late to lecture and office hours. We do get that feedback sometimes. Who has not been supportive of students, who faculty even evaluate low, whatever. You should then be able to click on the students individually to see exactly how they perform in each band. And the additional aspect we built in is it will alert us if we just don't have enough data on that student that's collected. Because to be honest, students don't always do, the surveys because they're bombarded with so many other surveys. Or it would also alert us if, say, faculty did not evaluate because they have so many already on their caseload. And so this is where we know we will need to step in to either have the instructional team evaluate them or investigate more. Maybe we'll have the head TA do that. And so it's just a system that just lets us know a more well-rounded approach of what's going on. And you can search it by all of the roles. You can search it by who's in front of the students, who's grading, who's a developer, what have you. And again, the best part is if we don't have enough data, we know we don't have enough data. It goes back to the challenge we had at the beginning, and I'm trying to wrap it up because I know we have to have time for questions. It goes back to the beginning where we typically never knew something was wrong or something was needed until the last minute. And so this framework and this system hopefully helps alleviate that. So with reducing the faculty burden, like we said, faculty still evaluates the GTAs at the end of the year. We don't want to take that away from them. We just want to give a more well-rounded approach and make sure that every TA is evaluated. And we have enough data to support what faculty is even telling us. So we distributed pretty much to a broader audience, the students, the head TAs, the instructional support team, so that faculty don't carry that evaluation burden alone. We still strongly encourage them to do it, but now is not the end all be all. So I'll touch on this really quick. With the road ahead and where we hope to go with this, GTAs, like many institutions, receive tuition remission for getting accepted into the program. And a portion of not only upholding their academic studies is their GTA performance as well. And so when their performance impacts their funding, the standards must be fair. It must be role specific, and it must be transparent. We want to make sure we lead with supporting them first because we want to support them. We want to ensure they have continuous funding and continuous instructional gains because most of them go into academia and not just industry. And so as we scale it out, we make sure that they never enter a classroom not having exactly what they need to be successful in that classroom. And what makes this replicable, if you would like to take this to your institution, you first start with what's broken. So we built the AI tool after we analyzed the problem. Students needed help communicating, or the GTAs needed help communicating. Students would communicate that they didn't feel the GTAs were inclusive enough in their language, or they explained concepts very well, or so many things. So we designed the tool to work around what our primary pain point was. So we also identified that we needed to classify what their specific role was in order to evaluate them clearly, because someone who is just developing and grading should not be evaluated the same way as someone who is in front of students every day. We worked together with both faculty and leadership and the instructional support team of what we were looking for specifically. So no matter what their role is as a TA, there were baseline categories that all of them should be evaluated in. So pedagogy, professionalism, compliance, and time management are all emerging from like what we asked them to do regardless of the course or their hierarchy. And we distributed the evaluation burden more broadly. So instead of just faculty, we had a more well-rounded approach. And the Power BI is, if you're not a Microsoft school, Power BI is not the only tool out there that helps you to generate a dashboard or a report, if you will, off of data collected. It's just the one that I had experience with and the one that we partnered with our university. And so that's what we went with. But any tool you have in your institution that helps you visualize data is just as meaningful, and this can be replicated the same way. In terms of the AI and where we're going with it, because we're fortunate enough to be a computer science department and we have so many people who can build things, the cost for the infrastructure was pretty low. The real investment is the time in building out every aspect of the evaluation, because as you can see, it's very layered, not necessarily the technology. So, as I conclude, I will say that our whole goal was to better support the GTAs. Like I said, just a few short years ago, we had less than 10. Now we have over 250. And I think with where we're going in technology, regardless of where we're going, in the job market, I don't anticipate that changing because students want to take up this major. And if we can better train and evaluate and support the student instructors, we'll have better student learning outcomes as well. And I would love to open the floor now with questions. You can absolutely get in touch with me via my email, which is qgee@purdue.edu. You can also befriend me or connect on LinkedIn. So it's linkedin.com /Quincy G. I come from K-12. Like I said, I believe in collaboration. So if you need me to walk you through how to make anything, I am here for it. So now I'd like to open it up for questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and come back, possibly. Oh, yeah. Okay. If you guys have any questions, the floor is open. Or you can write in the chat, obviously.
Thank you for your presentation. And I don't have a question, but as you were going through this, I was thinking of some of the different applications, like this could work maybe for subject matter experts or something like that,
Yeah.
outside of just graduate assistants.
Absolutely, absolutely. I didn't mention this part, but I work contractually with different school districts and even corporations, tech companies, on just how to, because with training and evaluation, it's also like training and development employees. It doesn't have to be student specific. So you're absolutely right. I see a question from Amy. It says, how challenging is it to adjust the system for shifting standards? Um, that's a fair question. Right now, the only shift we have coming across, especially on the instructional side, has been like ADA compliance. That has been a whole thing. So we have definitely had to completely revise our training approach to make sure that it was compliant and that the PDAs could do X, Y, and Z. We try to make the baseline foundation of it, however. We know that we collect data from our instructors with a certain baseline standard year after year. So we didn't anticipate that changing at all. It's certain data that we collect and it's certain things that they're required to do year after year. So we set that as our baseline. Now, if we continue to have to refine it, I hope that it will not take much overhead at all because the foundation or that skeleton is there. So like that schema that I showed you on Power BI, the only thing that should happen year after year, if I get sick or anything, somebody has to take it over, is they just upload the new data. That should be it. Thank you for that question. We have another one from Jacob. It says, as a lead teaching assistant, this would be super helpful for training newer TAs. Oh, absolutely. So I did not mention we have hopes of scaling it out to include undergrad TAs because of administrative changes, which are resulting in budget changes. They are considering utilizing UTAs a bit more because they are more affordable. And so I would love to, Jacob, if you email me or connect on LinkedIn, I will share with you whatever you need to make that possible.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
Have instructors ever, ooh, that's a great question, Alyssa. Have instructors ever disagreed with the AI rubric eval, and what happens then? Um, so as I stated in the training, we had them meet certain thresholds or to get a certain grade. A part of that was with the aggressive students, we intensified it to make it like really aggressive as an instructional support team. And so there were some TAs who had been GTAs for most of their PhD career who just could not pass, and they had a lot of feedback about how it was too aggressive, it was unrealistic, it was just impossible to pass. And honestly, we welcomed the feedback and we just used it to refine the tool. We did set up the AI rubric to not heavily skew their evaluation score at all, because again, this evaluation ties into like their annual review and their PhD funding. And so we didn't want to heavily penalize them if they didn't have a positive encounter with the AI. We did use like a really, really small percentage. And we provided a lot of flexibility for them to retake it, or maybe to do the foundational AI instead of the more advanced a few more times to balance it out. So we definitely worked with them.
It's a great question.
Yeah. Awesome question.
Do we have any other questions? I don't think so, but thank you so much for your session. That was just, wow, my mind is blown.
Yeah.
And I have so many thoughts about how we could, oh, it looks like we actually do have a question. Hold on. From another one from Amy.
Have you incorporated an RJ into your training? Do you mind elaborating on RJ, perhaps?
Let's see what she says.
Oh, no, actually we haven't. But I would love to speak more. So let me give a disclaimer. Prior to me being hired, which I just met a year at Purdue, our training was limited to just asynchronous video modules, which is what led to the creation of my position to make sure that they were more adequately trained. So as we continue to refine the training, we even got approved a course that they have to take their first year as an instructor. That was like my next baby project. I would love to speak with you more about how that can be incorporated into the training, because it was basically being built from the ground up.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Quincy, for all of your wisdom that you shared and for the explanation, and really just kind of giving us a demo of what this looks like. I appreciate it, and I hope that that was super helpful for the audience.
Yeah.
And now we're going to wrap up your session and welcome the next speaker. Everybody, please give a warm thank you and a round of applause to Quincy. Thank you again for sharing. We really
Thank you.